child opera star, Wall Street billions, and a Waterfall Mansion. Today on The Pursuit, Kate Shin. Welcome to The Pursuit. I'm your host, Richard Lee, and today we sit down with Kate Shin. Kate is the owner of the Waterfall Mansion and Gallery on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And I've been there a couple times, and I've met Kate a couple times, and every time I got to know her a little bit more and hear more of her story, it's just remarkable as to how God has been moving in her life from the very beginning. Kate is a Wall Street financier turned real estate entrepreneur. She is a developer turned fine art gallerist. I mean, she's done so many things and done all of them really, really well. But it's when she found an old carriage house on the Upper East Side of Manhattan that inspired her to develop that property into a multi-million-dollar mansion. And when I say multi-million dollars, I'm talking like $30-40 million. But what started out as an investment property has now turned into a house of prayer and a healing sanctuary for artists. So Kate, at a very young age, you were an opera singer on TV in Korea. So how good were you?
That's a very interesting question because now I actually really think back. I don't think I was really a great singer, but I think I was a great performer. So I don't think I had the greatest voice. But when I was on the stage, I was just so happy that people watch my performance and I see the joy, from each one of them. And that really excited me. And that's when I felt, oh my God, I could trust this. So I could go all the way.
Yeah.
So that's how I performed. And actually that joy actually became a fear.
Okay.
When I went to this very competitive, gifted art school, no longer there was a joy. People, jealousy and competition. And it was just, I was just scared to be on the stage.
How old were you when that happened?
That's when I was like 12 to 13 to 15. But I didn't want to disappoint my parents because I was always a girl that likes to please, and that's kind of my personality. Like that's in DNA, I guess.
Yeah.
So and then they, my parents spent a lot of investment on my vocal, lessons, and I didn't want to disappoint them. And I had this fear that I didn't want to sing anymore.
You were afraid to tell them.
Yeah, I didn't tell them because I didn't want to disappoint them. I didn't want them to worry about me. So I remember I sat down on a playground and I said, I don't know what to do. This fear, I'm standing in the gap. I cannot be practical. Like once I go all the way, trusting my emotions, and being a feeler, like every evening I had to get my math assignment done. I had to get this practical done.
Right.
And I had a tutor that she was always worried that because I'm not focusing.
Yeah.
So with that fear plus the fear that I don't feel the joy anymore, that really scared me and I didn't know what to do. So I remember I prayed, God, please take my voice away so that I have this legitimate reason.
Right. There's no way to continue.
That's what I did. And God took my voice.
So what does that mean?
So I had this, like when you were a teenager, you get your voice changed.
Yeah.
Right. And as a woman, it came earlier and I never got my voice back.
So your voice, as you sort of went through puberty, your voice changed enough that you could no longer sing opera.
No.
Wow.
Yeah. I didn't tell anybody. And I just lost voice.
Yeah.
That was how this kind of chapter of my little opera singer ended. And then I said I want to just study it because all my life, from when I was a little girl to all the way to 16, I was just singing all my life.
Did you miss the performance part of it, being able to bring joy to people?
See, that's the interesting part. So that's when I came to New York. I came to New York when I was 16 after I decided that I'm not going to continue singing.
By yourself?
So with my sister. My sister was already in the United States.
How old was your sister?
She was only a year older.
So 16 and 17-year-old came to...
New York City. Yeah. And I went to United Nations International School.
Okay.
Of course, my mom stayed with us half of time.
Yeah.
So I studied really hard to get into so-called normal liberal arts school. And then my father passed away when I was on freshman year in college. It was a heart attack. And he was a big businessman. Also, he was rock. He was a big figure. The baby of the family.
Yeah.
And so that traumatized me.
Yeah.
And he had a heart attack, so I didn't even have a time to say goodbye.
Right. It was sudden.
It was exactly. So that was when I told myself, okay, I don't want to be sad, and emotion is bad thing. It makes you sad, and you don't, it doesn't help you to get things done. Kate, you have to be independent, strong. Winning is to get things done.
Yeah.
I decide to cut all my emotions that makes me sad or emotional so that I can get things done. So I cut music, I cut TV. I stopped everything that makes me emotional.
Really?
Yeah. I lived like that for 10 years.
And would you say now, looking back, it was because you didn't want to enter into the grief of your father passing?
Yeah. That, but also it's a trauma where nobody ever, or I never learned how to process my pain. So I only learned how to push really deep down, this deep grief, right?
Yeah.
And then, I want to please my mom. I want to be proud girl. And for me to do that and make her happy and make her to be proud of me, I have to be independent. I have to be successful. I have to be, strong. So what do? Well, you go to Wall Street and you become successful.
Yeah.
I mean, that was kind of where I was. So after the college, I went straight to the Wall Street and I worked in finance world for 14 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was my career. Yeah. I have 2 masters in finance. So that says a lot. Yeah.
So you go into Wall Street and into finance. And did you feel like that was it? Like that's going to be your career?
Mm-hmm. And I was good too.
Yeah.
So I was really lucky. Now I think back, it was all God that I was one of a few Asian women in private equity fund, had overseas over 30 billion US dollar fund. And I started the Asia fund where we dedicate, this direct investment into Asia, for the real estate part. Billions of dollars went out if I decide to invest.
Yeah.
And also I was always, I always had this entrepreneur, spirit.
Yeah.
So I did not want to, work for someone else, although it's grand and it's a big, but I actually wanted to do my own fund.
Yeah.
So I quit and then I start my small real estate boutique fund. And that's how I, started this Waterfall site. It was a part of my investment and construction.
So you're starting your own fund and it was in real estate?
Yeah, it was all real estate in New York City. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then you're looking at real estate opportunities and you see this property, this property available on the Upper East Side.
Yeah, I was always just the investor, meaning that I was always monetary partner behind the kind of curtain. But now that I run my small real estate, fund as an investment, I'm going to actually develop my own property as well. So I'm not just going to be an investor, but I'm going to start, developing the property as well.
Yeah.
Constructing, designing, and all that. So the first site that I chose was this one.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Because I had other investment, in other properties, but the first site that I decided to actually build and develop was this one.
Wow. And what year was that?
It was 2008.
2008.
Yeah. When I came to this old carriage house site, lived by two generation of artist family for 120 years here. It was filled with all this little marks and beauty of artistic. It's like an artistic heritage that was just so beautiful here that I wanted to respect that. Something hit my heart. I think that's probably the first time, now that I think back, when I saw this site, I think that's when I had this heart and I was connecting my heart to the project, which I never did before.
This was the first time where your heart was pulled into your investment.
Yeah. And I love the history. So, and I actually brought the very, renowned, famous architect Toshiko Mori, and I shared the story to her that I really want to respect the artistic heritage of the site. So we want to incorporate that into the design concept and the concept of this kind of product, right?
Yeah.
So we came with the concept of marrying gallery and residence to respect that. So that's kind of the first design concept.
Yeah. So during your time in finance, did you feel a sense of fulfillment? Because it's admittedly very different than the work that you're doing now. It's related, but I think there's an aspect of the artistry that is absent when you're working in finance. Were you fulfilled? Were you satisfied with that job?
I never knew that I was going to do what I do now. And when I was in finance world, I just wanted to be successful, meaning successful by definition. I just wanted to keep going up. I just wanted to manage more funds and I want to perform well in number.
Yeah.
That's really, was I happy? I didn't even think about.
Yeah.
And that's not a word for me, because I cut off my emotions.
Right.
Because that came from my trauma. And I never wanted to take that out. So it was like a machine.
Yeah.
I just never learned how to process the pain. So I had to cut it off so that I don't get too emotional and I can just focus on getting things done.
Yeah.
Being practical.
Yeah.
Just like a lot of people who live in New York.
For sure.
Yeah. So that's really how I lived. I was always goal driven. Get things done, never try to even be emotional. To me, being emotional was weakness.
Yeah.
That's just how I lived all my life. So it's a big transformation, for me, because first of all, even this place, Waterfall, I built it as a part of my real estate investment and project. And I wanted to respect this beautiful artistic heritage. And I wanted to build a beautiful lifestyle property with a big name architect. And I wanted to sell to the collector and get my investment and move on.
Right, because it was a financial real estate investment.
Exactly. So, but during the construction...
And I have to ask, you said 2008 you purchased the property. Was this before the crash or after the crash?
It was actually right before the crash.
So possibly the worst time.
Worst time, yes. I think the acquisition itself was not a big issue, but the problem was, I spent about a year and a half for designing, with architect, and I did it all demolition. Because I wanted to build a green mansion, and which had a lot to do with strict requirements. So I could really not keep up anything here because asbestos, and there are a lot of things that I wanted to be really responsible. So we decided to demolish it, and then I restored only the facade from the little painting. So it looks like it was there for a long time,
right? But
actually, I restored it as if it was there for a long time, and inside was a complete gut out project. So year and a half in designing for green building, all that, and then took me another 3 years to kind of build the whole thing. So it took me 5 years to build this building.
Wow.
And going back to the crisis, those construction time was when market crashed.
Right.
So what happened was the bank were all closed. So this construction, lender closed in the middle of construction, what I was doing. And these vendors who were, the GC and all the general contractors, they all went bankrupt during that time. So I had people taking my money and file the bankruptcy everywhere.
No.
So so it was anybody for start business. It was like a worst time for anyone who start a business.
Right.
Not because of your capability. It's just the whole vendors, business partners, and bank. Everybody was just going out of business.
Was there ever a moment where you were just like, what have I done?
Yeah.
I'm going to give up. Or
yes.
This is it. This is the end of my career. This is the end of my money.
Everybody told me that, Kate, get out. And then it was not just about the financial crisis, but also, this is all God. That's why I'm trying to explain all this. So not only the financial crisis, but for the first time, I had this kind of personal attack meaning the neighbors around this, this site didn't like Asian women trying to build something new in their neighborhood.
Yeah.
So I had the complaints, and I had an inspector coming in every day from building department. So I had this unnecessary audit that put my construction stop work order 6 times.
Wow.
It's not just the time thing, but it cost. And,
Sure.
for anybody who does construction, when you have a stop work order like that many times, it's just, you're losing like so much, not just time, but like money and everything. And I didn't do anything wrong. And, I would get all those things, and that really hurt me. So I even went out, tried to talk to the neighbors, giving them my resume. I'm not a stranger.
Yeah. Right.
So now it's the first time that I'm actually building something. I deal with the construction workers, like 60, 70 people every day. And the neighbors don't like me. The market crashes. All the vendors, go out of business. So they cannot deliver what they were supposed to deliver to finish the construction. So, it was not just about financial crisis, but I had my emotional crisis.
Yeah.
Because I just couldn't control anything. So that's the time that I learned to surrender. First time that I've learned that there are things I cannot control.
Yeah.
And that's when I kneel down. God, I don't know. I thought that I could control. I thought I could plan things out and get it done. But nothing is working, and I don't know. And so that's really, I started praying again, really praying again at this construction site every morning before all the construction workers start coming in. God, guide me and help me to finish this building. And I think I prayed to him that, God, I'll do what you want me to do. Just help me to finish this.
Yeah.
So it took me 5 years to finish. And now, wow, I finished it. And this property was featured on Forbes. All the news is this young Asian woman, with this high price tag, with designed by Toshiko Mori, with waterfall inside.
Yeah.
And now, okay, it's time for me to market it and sell, get my good investment, and get out.
Right.
So I had a very high profile publicity on the building, and people loved this. So in the beginning, I actually, had this many art dealers who brings Picasso, Matisse, all this amazing masterpieces.
Just to sell the building.
Yeah, exactly.
Not to display the art. It was staging.
Exactly. But then because I wanted to sell to collector.
Sure.
So it was a natural marketing kind of strategy for me to bring this high profile art collections, to show it and bring this, people so that I can market and sell. This New York City art world is pretty tight, and they probably thought that I was some kind of big Asian art dealer. And she has this beautiful space that she's showing all this amazing masterpieces. So that's how the people in artwork start knock on door.
Really?
Yeah.
I think there's a sense in which people think that people with a lot of money or a lot of success or a lot of financial resources behind them, they don't experience those moments that you experienced here on your knees, pleading for God, saying, God, would you please open a door? I think a lot of people just think, well, you have money, like doors are open for you. But it really is just a matter of scale, right?
Yes.
And it's just, there's still those emotions and those moments where you're brought to your knees and pleading for God.
Yes. I didn't know what to do. Everything went wrong.
Yeah.
Like nothing was working. Not even one thing was going with the planning. Everything, all these things, it was not working. And then I had this emotional factors where, why do they hate me?
Right.
Right. I'm actually trying to do good thing to the neighbor. I'm building a green building, and I brought this very well-known, famous architect to actually enhance this blog. And why are they making everything hard? And actually, now that I think about it, everything actually really pressed me to expose my emotions. That's when I had to say, God, because all my life I was protecting my heart and I was good at cutting things off to protect my heart so that I can be logical, I can rationalize, I can be practical.
Yeah.
Even my own faith, I was very good at rationalizing. But I think this was the moment when God revealed my heart.
Kate, did you think about your father during that time?
Yeah, I did. That's actually the beginning, I think. It was the beginning of when God started healing process.
Yeah.
But because I'm so good at not bring that out, whatever that's trauma, deep grief, God had to kind of make me back to be emotional.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that was the first step, with this surrendering.
But you're so vulnerable in that moment, financially, spiritually, and emotionally. How did you get through it? Like, were you surrounded by good community, or were you just...
No, back then still, I think I was alone. And, God had a plan. That was my surrendering phase. And I finished the construction. But still, as I said, I was praying and I kneeled down. But I didn't have 100% of me. Still, I had this ego. I still had my older personality of, I can get this done. I have to prove. Once I start, I finish. That's Kate. But then because there's so much going on that I had to learn to start holding on, God helped me.
Yeah.
And he helped me. So I finished. It took me 5 years, got it done. So now it's a time for me to kind of throw the party and do all this intensive marketing, which I did.
Yeah.
And a time to celebrate. But that's when I hit the first depression in my life. Interesting, right?
When you were done.
Yes. I thought that I was going to be so happy. Yes, I was relieved, but I clearly remember I had this emptiness. I thought I was going to be so happy. I finally finished it. So now it's time to move on. But something didn't feel right. And I had the first depression out of emptiness.
Is that because you had completed the project?
No, I think it was because God has revealed my emotions already. So when you are just thinking, when you're just doing everything with logic and kind of the head, right? Yeah, you get it done, you finish the one, now you move on, right? That's how I left. But this waterfall site had a lot to do with emotionally, spiritually.
Yeah.
So when I finished it from the surface level, still something was missing. Something was not fulfilling, and I didn't know what it was. So that's when I kneeled down and asked God, if you're real, you answer my prayer and show me and tell me what my life purpose is. Because every morning I get up, I don't have the same motivation anymore. And I don't know why I have to get things done for.
Wow.
What is that for? Just to live? Just to prove? Prove to what? And I'm lost and I'm confused. And every morning I didn't want to get up because I had no motivation. I was in a battle. Show me. I want you to confirm and tell me what is my life purpose, God. You tell me because I can't find it anymore. And that was a time, and that's when God sent one of my first prayer partner. So he was artist who attended one of our very fancy, reception. We had like 500 people wearing long dresses, tuxedo, you know. And he was on the roof with his friend, and he hears God speaking into his heart that you go to Kate, speak to her, and pray with her. I bless this place. I bless her life. So he didn't know what to do. He discussed it with his friend, and his friend was like, are you crazy? You have these all these people with the dresses and everything, and she's a host of the evening. I don't know if you should go tell her. I just heard God speaking into my heart that, you should go and pray with you. And so they were leaving. I was at the door, greeting to all these people who came to that evening. And then the guy who came with him actually was one of friend who we used to listen to Bible app together. And I stopped going there. So he asked me, so Kate, how come you stopped coming to this Bible listening fellowship gathering. And I literally said to him, that's when I was, praying God that if you're real, I want to hear your voice. You confirm my life purpose. But he was not really answering. So I told him that, I needed more prayer in my life than listening to Bible app. That's literally how I said it to him. And the artist who was, standing next to him heard the word prayer. And then he came to me and he said, Kate, I don't know you. You don't know me. I'm not a weirdo. And he asked me, do you pray regularly? That's what he asked me. So I heard the word prayer and I walked toward him and I asked him, do you know how to pray? Because God doesn't listen to my prayer and I don't know how to hear, from the prayer. Can you teach me? And he's like, well, I don't know if I can teach you, but I can pray with you. So I said, can you come next Wednesday morning? I'm coming back from my business trip. So let's meet on Wednesday morning here again. And you teach me how to pray. So that was 5.5 years ago, Wednesday morning. Ever since, we never stopped the prayer. And now that has become very famous house of prayer in New York City at Waterfall.
Right here.
6 years, yes.
Wow.
He came and then he and we started praying. And then people hear about this prayer. So 2 people joined and artists joined. And so for 6 years. So we had hundreds people stop by, healed and prayed. Even this week, we never stopped once.
Yeah.
So that has been my journey for the last 5 years here, that I didn't know what I was doing, but my heart was connected to something that I could not leave. So I decided not to sell the property and I started putting everything I have just to somehow support, somehow to bring the joy to this community.
So how did you transition from real estate investing to the artist community?
So when I just, so when I finished the building, a lot of artist community heard about this place.
Right.
So I had the artists, people in artwork start knocking on door every day.
Yeah.
These artists, they want to show their work to me, to, display their work at this place because we had a gallery space, beautiful. And, so it was just very natural. And I actually showed a lot of these artwork as an exhibition, not knowing that I'm going to do that as my professional career.
Right. It was just staging the house.
Yeah, staging, but also, when I do that, I actually plan things. So I don't just stage it, but I actually had a change, right? Yeah. So when we even do the exhibitions change, we always had a great curator to create the exhibition and stuff. So people thought that I was just the one big gallerist, so that's how everything kind of start to shift. But I was never really into these names or anything. It was more about me drawn to these individual artists and understanding their emotions and their life, what they go through. That really fascinated me, and they're feeling unsafe, right? Because this reality versus what they feel, what they are designed to, to do. There's such a huge gap that this world is telling them that's not a safe place. That's exactly what I felt when I was even a little girl. Yeah. But what I saw was now from all this journey, why God has brought me here, but feeling and understanding exactly what they're feeling.
He wanted you to feel the pain and the angst that those artists were feeling, because that's where you were at 12 on that playground.
But I left, right?
Right.
So God put me back. Yeah. Not as an artist, but it literally put me back in a way like a mother, like a teacher, like a friend who actually connects intuitively, but I'm trained as non-artist
Right.
so that I can be a facilitator.
Yeah.
I can be
A curator.
a connector,
Yeah.
So these, this living artist, it doesn't matter whether they're visual artists, musician, writers who writes poem, writers who writes play.
Yeah.
Why did God actually design them to be more sensitive, to be as a feeler,
Mm-hmm.
not just as a practical person?
Yeah.
Why? Because God has designed them as a messenger, designed them as a visionary, meaning that they don't chase after the market, but they lead the market. That's why this art and culture, even the spiritual value, theology, those are capital. Those are clearly defined as a capital. But then the world that we're living in, with the internet, all this, nobody has a patience anymore. Everything you have to see right away.
Right.
That led the people's perception of a value or the capital, unless you can touch, you can tangibly see, nobody see that as a value.
Your decision not to sell the mansion really became a vehicle through which you can now minister
Absolutely
to those artists and to give them that space. Tell me about that.
So when we are dealing with these living artists, their creativity, that as a capital, that as a value, right? How do we define that? This contemporary art world, when I looked at it, because I am from commodity world, I'm from the number world.
Right.
When you're dealing with the human flourishing aspect of creative capital, your focus is in human artist. But there is such a gap. There is an abstract between artist and art. There's no wholeness. How are you going to talk about this artwork when you are not really understanding this living artist life and what they think and what they love and what they're afraid and right? So that was the first thing that I've noticed. Something is off here. And that I connected that right away, that, oh my God, everything is becoming so transactional. You're trying to fit into this transactional model and treating everything as a commodity.
So in some ways, you're saying, I want to pay attention to the artist, not just the art that they produce.
Yes.
So we're sitting here on the 5th floor, and this is a sanctuary. This is not open to the public. You've designed this intentionally as a sanctuary for artists to come
for healing.
Right.
Everything has become so transactional so that even when we are dealing with human capital aspect, you don't invest in relationship anymore unless there's a clear return that comes right away. Nobody wants to invest in process. That's where we're living in. That's killing this creative world. You have to invest in process. You have to invest in relationship. Why? Because we're dealing with human. There's so much potential that can be unlocked for this living artist. And we cannot just be judgmental with what they have done. Because we're not dealing with the Picasso.
How have you seen people affected by the safe space that you give them?
Oh my goodness. So we focus a lot on being rather than doing. Because now that everybody see artists as just a product maker, so they're just the producers. So, they're never being focused on being.
Right.
There's a fundamental transfiguration, I should have used that word, from one of the artists who's not Christian, stayed here about 3 weeks. One of the master ceramic artists from Asia. One of the best-selling artists because he's a master in ceramic art in Asia, very well known. And all his life as an artist, he had to prove himself because he's a master. And when his name goes out, it sells, right?
Yeah.
Nobody asked him really about what really wants to do. And this artist actually, for the first time, he didn't want to prove anymore anything as an artist. That's all he did all his life. For the first time, after this spending 3 weeks here, for the first time, he said, yes, I don't want to prove. I'm tired of proof.
Yeah.
And I'm not here to prove. I want to share what my heart says.
Yeah.
So there's that little shift that transfigured this artist, and all his artwork is changed.
Wow. So the things that he's produced since then.
Everything's changed now.
Wow.
Changing.
So Kate, as you look back on your career, your very many careers, there were times where you were leading with your heart, and there were times where you're leading exclusively with your head. And now it seems like you've arrived at a point where you can use both. When you look back on your life, how do you think about those seasons of your life now, seeing the sort of purpose that you're fulfilling now?
It's actually a very good point in observation where before Waterfall, as you said, my life was led by head, where, I had to protect my heart. I thought that was a way to protect my heart because I never learned how to process pain. And whereas, during Waterfall journey for the last 5 years, after the construction part, I focused on my heart part. And it was really very recent. God has started to reveal how God wants to put two together as a facilitator and as an activator. So that's when I was convinced that, okay, God really wants to use my life and whatever he has given to me as a facilitator, as a connector, but also someone who actually activates as a frontier to lead whatever God has allowed me to experience.
So we're sitting in this multi-million-dollar mansion on the Upper East Side, and you're using it to give safe space to heal artists, to give them space to share their heart. Is it worth it?
It's actually very interesting. I think God is genius. I mean, more than genius, of course. If I grew up, let's say, in art world, and if I was just talking about this art and this art language, probably they will also see me as, it's the same thing that's talking same thing from art world. But someone like me who has 2 masters in finance numbers, lived all my life trying to prove, the value in numbers. Now I'm here and telling people that this is value. So it's actually how God uses me and my life to actually share the story for someone who's not from art world, actually using me in a way for people to get more attention. So is it worth it? So to me, my life here, it's not about art. It's not an art world. It's not just about culture, but it's actually, I say to everybody that my journey here is just like walking on water. And the 1,000 testimonies, from these 100 artists, the people who's been here and, experienced God's presence and healed and inspired and found hope and love. And if I have to walk away and say, because there's no quantitative value that I can prove to this world, that's the same thing as me saying that these 1,000 testimonies are not true. Right? And how do you define that value?
The stories that you've heard, the way that people have been touched and transformed and met God, you can't really put a price on it.
Yes.
On the surface, Kate's story seems like she jumped around from career to career. Opera singer, Wall Street, real estate developer, fine art gallerist. But when you hear the story of how God was moving in her life, you can see how God was taking her on a journey of healing and restoration, and now using her as a minister of healing and restoration to those in the artist community. It's not a wayward path, it's a path straight to the heart of God. If you haven't been to the Waterfall Gallery, you really owe it to yourself to see it. Go to waterfallmansion.com and find out more about the gallery and about the property itself. And I'm sure you're all so curious about what a $40 million mansion looks like on the inside, so I'm going to link to the Open House NYC episode where they take you inside. Thanks so much for listening to The Pursuit. I'm loving the feedback that I get from all of the listeners. Keep it coming. I'm really excited about what's ahead. Find us on social @ThePursuitCast and keep the conversation going. Now, as we go, remember, you may not know where your journey ends, but you can find God all along the path. You've had a lot of famous people come through your gallery. What was the time that you were the most starstruck?
I was never really impressed by people.
Of course not, because you were singing on a stage on TV in Korea at 4 years old.